Story 1. The graveyard shift at the abandoned mall. I work night security at an abandoned shopping mall in rural Pennsylvania. But here is the thing, Soti. It is not completely abandoned. During the day, there are a few stores that still operate. A movie theater that only shows matinees, a small grocery outlet, a couple of restaurants. But when the sun goes down, the mall becomes something else entirely. Something that doesn't feel like it belongs to the same world as the daytime version. I've been doing this job for 3 years now. 3 years of walking through empty corridors, checking locked storefronts, watching security cameras, or at least they didn't used to. The mall was built in 1987, back when shopping malls were the center of American social life. Now most of them are dead, hollowed out like the corpse of some massive beast. This one is no exception. The anchor stores in J.C. Penney, Macy's, Civi. They've been closed for a decade. The smaller shops mostly boarded up. Half the lights don't work. The others flicker like they're trying to communicate in Morse code. My shift starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. It is just me and Larry, the other night guard. Though Larry usually disappears for hours on end to sleep in his car in the parking garage. So effectively, it is just me walking a mall the size of 6 football fields. Alone, every single night. The job is boring most nights, monotonously boring. I check the loading docks, make sure the emergency exits are still locked, watch the monitors respond to alarms that are usually triggered by nothing funding, a wind-blown trash can, a rat in the ventilation system, the building settling. But 6 months ago, something changed. It started small. I noticed that one of the gates to the old J.C. Penney, we call it the West Wing shoe, had been partially rolled up. Just enough for someone to slip under. I reported it. Maintenance came during the day and secured it. 2 days later, it was open again. Same thing happened with the Macy's entrance. I told my supervisor, Derek. He seemed worried in a way that felt disproportionate to the problem. Don't go back there, he told me. Just lock them during your shift and report it in the morning. Don't investigate, which, you know, is a red flag. If I am telling a story about a security guard being told not to investigate something, the natural human instinct is to investigate immediately. I didn't, not at first. I followed orders. I'd lock the gates, note the time, and move on. But then I started hearing things. The mall has a specific sound to it at night. The HVAC system that never fully shuts off. The distant hum of refrigeration units in the grocery store. The occasional ping of the water pipes contracting as the temperature drops. You get used to it. It becomes white noise. What I started hearing was different footsteps. Not the echo of my own footsteps. I learned to distinguish those pretty quickly. These were someone else's. They'd come from the West Wing, usually around 2 a.m. Deliberate footsteps. Someone walking with purpose through the abandoned department store. I checked the security footage. Every single time I heard the footsteps, I'd run back to the monitor station and pull up the West Wing cameras. Nothing. Just empty corridors. Escalators that hadn't moved in years. Racks of clothes that had been left hanging since the store closed, but I could hear them, clear as day. The first time I actually saw something, I nearly quit on the spot. It was a Tuesday night, around 3 a.m. I was doing my regular rounds, and I decided to actually go back to the West Wing instead of just checking cameras. I don't know why I did this. Probably because I was tired of feeling like I was losing my mind. The gate was open again. I locked it behind me and walked into the Macy's. The air inside was cold and had a smell that made my stomach turn, like spoiled perfume, mixed with something organic that had been decaying for a very long time. Most of the merchandise was gone, cleared out years ago when the store closed, but the fixtures remained. The glass counters, the mirror panels, the signs advertising sales from 2012. It was like walking through a museum of American consumerism, preserved in amber. I was walking through the cosmetics section when I saw her. She was standing at one of the makeup counters, and she was looking at herself in the mirror. She had long, dark hair and was wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 1980s, a neon windbreaker and leg warmers. She didn't turn around when I entered the section. She just kept staring at her reflection. I said, hey, you can't be back here." She didn't respond, didn't acknowledge me at all. I walked closer, and something in my brain was screaming at me to turn around and leave. But I didn't. I got closer, maybe 10 feet away. "Ma'am, you need to leave the building." She turned to look at me, and I wish I hadn't seen her face, because her face was wrong. It was the right shape, the right features, but it was completely gray, like all the color had been leached out of her skin, and her eyes. Situ, her eyes were solid black, no iris, no pupil. I don't remember running. I don't remember how I got back to the security office. My next clear memory is sitting at my desk, my heart pounding so hard. I thought I was having a heart attack, and Larry standing over me asking if I was okay. I told him what I saw. He went pale, actually genuinely pale. "You weren't supposed to be the one to see her," he said. "I was supposed to be the one monitoring the cameras during that time. I usually sleep through it. What are you talking about?" I asked. "There was a girl," he said. "In 1994, she went missing from this mall. Her name was Sarah, 16 years old. She disappeared from the bathroom near the food court, and they never found her. The search went on for months. They searched this entire mall multiple times. Nothing." He pulled out his phone and showed me a news article. "Sarah Chen, missing since the 15th of March, 1994. The article included a photo. It was her. The girl with the neon windbreaker and leg warmers. The girl with the gray skin and black eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because she comes back," Larry said. "Not every night, but regularly. Every few weeks, she walks through the West Wing. And I think the building is trying to keep her here. It opens the gates. It lets her wander. And I think if someone tries to stop her, tries to make her leave, something bad happens." "That is insane," I said. "That is completely insane." "I know, but I've worked here for 12 years. I've seen things. 2 security guards before you quit suddenly. Just stopped showing up. One of them, his wife told me he wouldn't stop screaming about the girl in the mall, about her black eyes. They had to put him in a psychiatric facility. I wanted to quit that night. I wanted to drive home and never come back. But I needed the job. My wife was pregnant. We needed the health insurance. So I stayed, and over the following months I learned how to coexist with Sarah, because that is what it is, Sunday coexistence. I learned that she never actually tries to hurt you. She just walks. She just explores the mall she died in or disappeared into, or got trapped in Saint-T. I don't think we'll ever know exactly what happened to her. Some nights I see her, some nights I don't. But I always know when she is here. The temperature drops. The fluorescent lights flicker in a specific pattern, and I hear her footsteps. I've learned to lock the gates before she arrives, so she doesn't wander too far from the West Wing. I've learned that if you maintain a distance of at least 20 feet, she doesn't acknowledge you. I've learned that the worst thing you can do is look directly at her eyes for more than a few seconds. But here is the thing that still terrifies me, even after months of this. Last week, she was in a different part of the mall. I saw her on the security cameras walking through the JCPenney, the one on the east side, not the west. The building is expanding her territory, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if she's becoming stronger, more aware, more real. I don't know if eventually she'll stop being contained to the dead stores and start showing up in the places where people actually shop. I don't know if eventually she'll find her way out of the mall entirely. I gave my 2 weeks' notice last month. I am leaving at the end of the month. I can't do this anymore. But the thing that really worries me, Sooty, the thing that keeps me awake at night, Tootie, is that I saw a posting on the mall's website. They're looking for a new night security guard. They're offering competitive wages and full benefits. I can't help but think about whoever takes that job. I can't help but wonder if they're also going to see Sarah, if they're also going to have to make a choice to quit and lose their income, or stay and share the night shift with a ghost. I've thought about calling the place and warning them, but what would I even say, and would they believe me? Story 2. The psychiatric hospital's locked ward. I am a psychiatric nurse. I've been working in mental health for 8 years now, and I've worked in 3 different hospitals. I've worked with patients who have severe schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe depression, suicidal ideation. You name it, I've learned to be calm under pressure, to de-escalate situations, to recognize the signs of a psychiatric emergency before it becomes a crisis. But I've never worked anywhere like Harrison Psychiatric Hospital in upstate New York. Harrison is old. It was built in 1952 and looks like it. The building has this institutional quality that is actually kind of depressing just to walk through. Long corridors with mint green walls, fluorescent lights that flicker, the smell of disinfectant that never quite masks something underneath it, something organic and unpleasant. I got hired 6 months ago. I was excited about it. The pay was decent, the commute was reasonable, and I was told that the night shift usually involved light work, mostly monitoring patients, administering medications, filling out paperwork. Nothing too intense. I should have asked more questions about the locked ward. The locked ward is on the 4th floor. It is officially called the Intensive Care Unit for Complex Psychiatric Patients. But everyone just calls it the locked ward. It houses about kind of depressing just to walk through. Long corridors with mint green walls, fluorescent lights that flicker, the smell of disinfectant that never quite masks something underneath it, something organic and unpleasant. I got hired 6 months ago. I was excited about it. The pay was decent, the commute was reasonable, and I was told that the night shift usually involved light work, mostly monitoring patients, administering medications, filling out paperwork. Nothing too intense. I should have asked more questions about the locked ward. The locked ward is on the 4th floor. It is officially called the Intensive Care Unit for Complex Psychiatric Patients. But everyone just calls it the locked ward. It houses about 30 patients who are considered too dangerous or unstable to be on the regular floors. These are people who have made serious suicide attempts, people who have become violent, people whose conditions are so severe that they need around-the-clock observation. I was initially assigned to floors 2 and 3, normal psychiatric ward stuff. But 3 months into my job, I was asked if I'd be willing to take a shift on the locked ward. The regular night nurse had called out sick and they were desperate. I said yes, because I am a professional, and I thought I could handle it. The locked ward is different from the other floors. For starters, it is actually locked. There is a code to get in, and once you are in, you can't just freely move between areas like you can on the regular floors. There are multiple secure doors between the nursing station and the patient rooms. Everything is designed to prevent escape or violence. Around midnight, I was charting in the nursing station when I noticed something. On that first night, I worked with a veteran nurse named Thomas. He was in his 50s and had been working at Harrison for over 20 years. He showed me the layout, introduced me to the patients I'd be working with that night, explained the protocols. These patients need consistency, he said. They need to know what to expect. Routine is critical. Deviation from routine causes anxiety. and anxiety can trigger behavioral problems, so we keep things predictable. I understood. I'd worked with high-needs patients before. The night started normally. I did rounds, checked on patients. Thomas seemed relaxed, friendly. He told me stories about other places he'd worked, other patients he'd cared for. There was a door I hadn't seen before. It was at the far end of the locked ward, past the patient rooms, down a short hallway that kind of seemed to dead end. The door was painted the same color as the walls, which is probably why I hadn't noticed it on my initial. I asked Thomas about it. "Where does that go?" He got very still. He looked at the door, then back at me, and there was something in his eyes that I'd never seen before in a healthcare professional. It was fear. "That is the isolation wing," he said quietly. "We don't go down there." "Why?" I asked. "Is there a patient there?" "Not exactly," he said. Before I could ask what that meant, one of the alarms went off. A patient in room 6 was in distress. We had to respond, and the conversation was dropped for the rest of the night. I thought about that door, and I think that is important to understand 3D. The reason I became obsessed with it was precisely because Thomas reacted the way he did. If he'd just said, "Oh, that is a storage room," I would have forgotten about it immediately, but his fear was contagious. The next time I worked the locked ward 22 weeks later, Thomas wasn't there. I worked with a nurse named Rebecca. She was in her 30s and had a no-nonsense attitude. I didn't ask her about the isolation wing immediately. I wanted to feel out the shift first, but around 2 a.m., I heard something, a sound coming from that direction. It sounded like someone was singing, very quietly. A lullaby, I think. Something that made my skin crawl in a way that I couldn't quite explain. I asked Rebecca about it. She finished entering something into the computer, logged out. And then she looked at me and said, "You should probably go home sick. Tell them you have a migraine or something. Don't come back to this shift." "Why?" I asked. "Because once you notice it, you can't unnotice it," she said. "Once you hear it, you keep hearing it. And eventually you start wondering about it more and more until you can't help yourself, and you go down there to investigate. And nobody comes back from that." "Nobody comes back from what?" I said. I am not going to be afraid of a room, but I was. I was very afraid. And that fear was irrational, which actually made it worse, because I am a nurse. I'm supposed to be rational. I'm supposed to understand mental illness and not be susceptible to superstitious thinking. Rebecca left an hour early that night, citing a personal emergency. I was alone on the locked ward for the last several hours of the shift, and eventually my curiosity overcame my fear. I shouldn't have done it, but I got up from the nursing station and walked down that hallway. The singing had stopped, which somehow made it worse. My heart was pounding as I approached the isolation wing door. It wasn't locked. The door was just standing there, unlocked, like it was waiting for me. The isolation wing was smaller than I expected, maybe 6 or 7 patient rooms arranged around a central nursing station, but it was empty, completely empty. No patients, no furniture, just empty rooms with empty beds, and the walls were covered in something. At first I couldn't figure out what it was, but as I walked closer, hundreds of them, thousands maybe, drawn in pencil, crayon, ink, whatever the patients had access to, every inch of wall covered in drawings. Most of them were abstract, scribbles, patterns, geometric shapes, but some of them were recognizable. Some of them were people, and some of them looked like me. They had my hair, my build, my approximate features, and they were all drawn with a look of intense fear on their faces, like the person drawing them was trying to capture the exact moment before something terrible happens. She was wearing a hospital gown. She was very thin, almost skeletal, and her skin was very pale. Her hair was long and hadn't been brushed in what looked like years. And she was looking at me with an intensity that made me understand, on a purely instinctive level, that something was very wrong with this woman. Not in the normal psychiatric way, in a way that went beyond diagnosis and medication. "You are new," she said. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't spoken in a long time. "But you have the right energy, the right fear. That is good. That is what we need." "I am going to call security," I said, which was stupid, because security wasn't going to come to the isolation wing. Security wasn't supposed to know about the isolation wing. "No, you are not," she said, and she was right. I didn't move. I was frozen. She came closer and she took my face in her hands. "I've been here for so long," she whispered. 30 years, maybe more. I've lost count, and there are others. In the walls, in the spaces between the rooms. They sent us here when we stopped responding to medication, when we started seeing things, when we started seeing things, when we started being the wrong kind of crazy. The dangerous kind, not dangerous to ourselves. Dangerous to people who shouldn't exist." "What are you talking about?" "The building doesn't want us to leave," she said. "The building keeps us here, and it feeds on fear. Your fear, it needs your fear. That is why it lets you find this place. That is why it lets you hear the singing. That is when every light in the isolation wing shut off simultaneously. Complete darkness. And in that darkness, I heard sounds, lots of sounds. Footsteps, breathing, that singing but much louder, coming from multiple directions. I ran. I don't remember the path back. But I ran and I hit something hard-won, the nursing station, Sonny, and I ran past it, and I hit the door to the main locked ward, and I got through it and I locked it behind me. Thomas was there, just standing there watching me, like he knew exactly what had just happened. "Did you go to the isolation wing?" he asked. I couldn't speak, I just nodded. "Did you see the patients?" I nodded again. "Did they tell you about the building, about what it does?" "I need to leave," I said. "I need to leave right now." "That is the problem," Thomas said. "You can't leave. You've heard the singing. You've been touched by them. The building knows you now, and the building never lets go of its nurses." I submitted a resignation letter that morning. I said I was moving to California, which was a lie, but I needed them to think I was leaving the state, leaving the hospital, leaving the locked ward. But Thomas was right. I can't leave, because every night since I quit, I hear the singing in my apartment, in my car, in my dreams, and I feel cold hands on my face just before I fall asleep. I think I'm going to have to go back. I think the building is going to pull me back eventually, and I think when I do go back, the isolation wing is going to look a lot like the one I saw in my nightmares, and the patients are going to look an awful lot like me. Story 3. The highway rest stop attendant. I've worked at a rest stop on Interstate 80 in Nebraska for the past 4 years. I know that probably doesn't sound like the setting for a horror story. Rest stops are mundane places, filled with tired travelers, cheap coffee and bathrooms that smell like industrial strength cleaner and human desperation. But this particular rest stop has a feature that most rest stops don't. There is a basement. It is not something that gets advertised or that customers know about. It is just there, used for storage, maintenance of the HVAC system, that kind of thing. I've never been down there, and that is not because I haven't been curious. I've wanted to go down there lots of times. But there is something about that basement that makes my brain instinctively refuse to cooperate when I think about going down there. It is like my subconscious is screaming at me not to. I work the night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most of my job is pretty straightforward. I am there to clean the bathrooms, restock supplies, keep an eye on things, make sure nobody's causing trouble. During the day, the place gets busy, truckers, families, on road trips, people desperate for a bathroom break. But at night, especially after midnight, it gets pretty empty. That is when I usually do the heavy cleaning. Bathrooms, lobby, the hallways, everything. I usually have the place to myself by around 10 p.m. The rest stop has this weird layout. And then there is this hallway that most customers don't notice. It is kind of hidden past the bathrooms, and it leads to a maintenance room, and also to the door that goes down to the basement. I've worked here for 4 years and I've never gone down to the basement. Until last month. I was stocking supplies one night around 2 a.m. and I heard something strange. A sound coming from below. It sounded like someone crying. Not loud. Crying full, more like muffled sobbing. Coming through the floor, I told myself it was probably just the building. Old buildings make weird sounds. Pipes, settling, whatever. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next night, I heard it again, and this time it was accompanied by another sound. Rhythmic banging, like someone hitting something over and over. I knew I should probably just ignore it. I knew that going down to a basement in a rest stop in the middle of Nebraska. But I was curious, and I am not a scared person. I've worked night shifts for most of my adult life. I am used to being alone in places where normal people are asleep. So I went to the maintenance room and I unlocked the door to the basement. There was a light switch right next to the door. I flipped it. The lights came on, revealing a concrete staircase leading down. The walls were bare concrete, unpainted. It was cold down there. Sebby, I could feel the temperature drop from the first step. As I went down, the crying sound got louder, and the banging. It was definitely banging. Metal on metal. The basement was large, much larger than I would have expected based on the size of the building above it. It seemed to extend way beyond the footprint of the rest stop. There were support columns, mechanical systems, storage racks with cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment. And at the far end, past all of that, there was a light, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, illuminating a section of the basement. The crying was coming from that direction. I walked toward it, past racks of supplies around the massive HVAC unit. My heart was pounding. I knew I was being stupid. I knew I should turn around and go back upstairs, but something was pulling me forward. As I got closer to the light, I could see that the light was illuminating something on the floor. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. It was a man, or the remains of a man. He was sitting against the concrete wall, and he was very old, or at least his skin was hanging off his frame in a way that suggested he hadn't eaten in a very long time. His eyes were sunken, and his hands were covered in blood. There were scratches and cuts all over them, like he'd been hitting something repeatedly. In front of him, there was a metal door, like a safe, but bigger, and the metal around the handle was scratched and dented, like someone had been trying to open it with their bare hands. "Help me," the man said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Please help me. I need to get back inside." "Inside the door?" I asked. Even though I knew the answer. "Inside," he confirmed. "Inside is better. Outside is so lonely. Inside is where they are. Inside is where I am supposed to be. Who are they?" But before he could answer, the basement lights went out. All of them, including the single light bulb that was illuminating the man. I was standing in complete darkness, and I could hear breathing, multiple people breathing, and footsteps coming from all directions. I ran. I didn't try to make sense of what I was experiencing. I didn't try to be brave or rational. I ran back through the darkness, my hands out in front of me, bouncing off support columns and storage racks. I made it back to the staircase more through luck than through actual navigation. And I ran up the stairs and I slammed the basement door shut and I locked it. I didn't come back to work for 3 days. I told my manager I was sick. When I finally did come back, I was tempted to check the basement again to see if I'd imagined the whole thing. But I didn't, because I think part of me knows what I'm going to find if I go back down there. I think I'm going to find that the man I saw is still there, and I think I am going to find that he is going to ask me again to help him get inside the door. And I think I am going to realize at that moment that the door doesn't lead anywhere. That it is not a way in or out of anything physical, that it is something else entirely. I've thought about quitting, about just finding another job and never coming back here. But I can't, because I am curious, and because I feel like if I leave without understanding what is down there, it is going to follow me. So I am still here. Still working the night shift at the rest stop. Still hearing that crying and banging most nights. Still refusing to go back down to the basement. But I know that eventually I am going to have to go back. And I know that when I do, I am not going to come back up. Story 4, the overnight shipping facility. I am a supervisor at a major shipping and logistics facility. We handle packages for an enormous multinational company that will go unnamed for legal reasons. The facility operates 24 hours a day. During the day, it is chaos and hundreds of employees. Trucks arriving constantly, packages being sorted and processed at breakneck speed. But the night shift is different. The night shift is smaller. We have maybe a quarter of the daytime staff. The work is more methodical. There is less pressure. We process the backlog that the day shift couldn't handle, and we prepare for the next day's operations. It is supposed to be the easier shift, the more relaxed shift. For most of my 5 years working at this facility, it has been. But something changed about a year ago. It started with packages going missing. Not many at first. 1 or 2 per week. Packages would come through the intake system, get logged into the computer, but never make it to the shipping area. We'd get complaints from customers saying they never received their packages, and we'd have to do an investigation, and we'd always find that the packages had disappeared somewhere in the facility. Management was frustrated. They installed new security cameras. They changed procedures. They implemented new tracking systems. Nothing made a difference. Packages kept disappearing. It was only after about 3 months that someone noticed a pattern. All the missing packages had one thing in common: 3DZ. They were all being shipped to funeral homes. Yes. Caskets, burial vaults, cremation containers, that kind of thing. We handle a lot of different types of packages, so it is not like funeral supplies are unusual. But when you look at just the missing ones, the pattern becomes unmistakable. I brought this to my manager, Derek. He got very quiet when I told him. He asked me not to mention it to anyone else. He said he would look into it. 3 days later, Derek pulled me aside and told me that the issue had been resolved. He didn't explain how or why. He just said to stop investigating and to let him know if any more packages went missing. But packages did keep disappearing. The same kind, going to the same type of destinations. And then something else started happening. Late night, around 3 or 4 a.m., when the facility was at its emptiest, I would find packages that had been opened. Not broken open, tween carefully opened. Like someone had cut the tape, looked inside. These packages weren't going to funeral homes. These were regular packages. Clothing, electronics, gifts, and they'd been opened, inspected, and then resealed. I checked the security footage, and this is where it gets weird. The footage showed nobody opening these packages. There was no one in the frame when the packages were opened, but you could see the packages opening. You could see the tape being cut. You could see items being moved around inside, all with no visible person doing it. I showed the footage to Derek. He watched it very carefully, and then he asked me to follow him. He took me to the back of the facility, to an area that most people never go to. It is where we store damaged packages and returned items, waiting to be sent back to vendors or salvaged. It is a large warehouse space, mostly empty. Mostly there is someone in this building. I don't know who, I don't know why, but they've been here for longer than I've been working here, and they're getting stronger, stronger. I said. Derek, that is insane. We're talking about a person, a physical person. They must show up on the security cameras somewhere. They do, he said, but not in the way you'd expect. Come on. He led me to a back office and pulled up security footage. And he showed me something that I still can't quite explain. It was footage from the intake area from about 3 a.m. the previous night. And there was a figure visible on the screen, a figure that appeared to be made of shadow. Not a person obscured by darkness. A figure that was literally made of shadow. It was solid, three-dimensional, but it had no features, no hands, no visible eyes, just a human-shaped void. And on the footage, you could watch this shadow figure move through the facility. It would glide past the night shift workers, some of whom didn't even seem to notice it, and it would move to packages and open them. Or it would move into areas that should have been locked and nobody would stop it. What is that? I don't know, Derek said. But it started appearing about the same time the packages started disappearing. The funeral home packages. I have a theory, I think this thing, whatever it is looking for specific items. And when it can't find them in the packages destined for funeral homes, it gets frustrated and starts opening other packages, tearing them apart, looking for something. What? I said. What could it possibly be looking for? Derek didn't answer immediately. He closed the footage and just sat there thinking. A body, he finally said. I think it is looking for a specific body, a specific person, and it will keep looking until it finds them. I quit the next day. I told Derek I was moving out of state. I told my family I got a new job. I left that facility and I haven't looked back. But here is the thing. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop wondering who this thing is looking for. What person is so important that some kind of shadow entity is tearing through a shipping facility, night after night, searching. And I've started having dreams. Dreams where I am the one it is looking for. Where I am the body it has been searching for all this time. Where it finally finds me. And I realize that I've been dead for years. And I've been wandering through this shipping facility. Not realizing it. Not understanding why nobody can see me. And in these dreams, the shadow figure finds me, and it starts dragging me towards something. A package, a sealed box, and it is trying to put me in it, to mail me somewhere. I wake up screaming, and last week I got a package at my house. There was no return address, no indication of who sent it, but it was addressed to me, and it was from the shipping facility. I haven't opened it. I am looking at it right now, as I am writing this. It is sitting on my kitchen table. It is very heavy. It is the size of a human body, and I am starting to understand something. I think this shadow thing, Foon, I think it has been trying to find me all along. I think I was supposed to be on one of those packages, supposed to be shipped to a funeral home. And something went wrong. Something in the cosmic machinery of death misfired, and I got away. And now it is here to correct that mistake. I've been making a list of funeral homes in my area. I figure if I know where the packages are going, maybe I can prevent whatever this is from getting what it wants. But I also know that is probably futile. I think whatever is in that box on my kitchen table isn't really inside the box at all. I think it is already inside me, and it has been inside me for a very long time, and it is waiting for me. But sooner or later, I'm going to get curious. Sooner or later, I am going to cut the tape and look inside. And when I do, I think I am finally going to understand what happened to me, why I got away from the shipping facility, why I got to keep living when someone Chuin wasn't supposed to let me. And I think I'm going to realize that I never actually left that facility at all. Well, friends, that concludes our 4 stories from the night shift. Tumblr security guard, haunted by a ghost in an abandoned mall. A psychiatric nurse, trapped by something in a hospital's locked ward. A rest stop attendant, terrorized by something in the basement. And a shipping facility supervisor pursued by a shadow entity, searching for something specific. The common thread through all of these stories is that they take place during the night shift. There is something about the night hours, especially the hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. June, that seems to pull back the veil between our world and whatever exists beyond it. Perhaps it is because most of the world is asleep and there is less mental energy holding reality together. Or perhaps these things have always been there, and we just don't normally see them because we're not paying attention. Or perhaps these stories are completely fictional, and I'm just telling you tales to entertain you late at night, when you are alone in your own darkness. I suppose that is the beauty of stories like these, uncertainty, the not knowing. Because once you know something is fake, it loses its power to frighten you. But when you are unsure, free, when you can't quite convince yourself that it is impossible, then the fear lingers. And perhaps that is what draws us to these stories. Not the desire to be frightened, but the desire to sit with that uncertainty. To exist in that space between belief and disbelief, between the rational and the irrational. So sleep well tonight. Or don't sleep. Stay awake if you prefer. I hope you'll join us again for more stories from the night shift. Because believe me, soon, there are plenty more stories where these came from. The night shift is full of them.